Welcome back to Voth Quality Creative. In my previous video, I extended my fence, and in this video I plan on building a shed to store all of my outdoor tools. After finishing the fence, I tried to level the ground as much as possible to make my life a little bit easier. I laid down some weed barrier and used some extra pavers that I found lying around. Once I had a decent foundation, I decided to move on to create the floor frame. My initial intention was to build this shed in place, but after doing some math wrong and having several days of rain, I decided to rethink things a little bit. At this point, I still really hadn't had enough time to really think about how difficult it would be to build this thing in place. I also thought I could live with the little mistakes that I had already made, but starting fresh was ultimately the route I wanted to take. At least this little exercise reassured me that my leveling preparation was accurate. Here I'm cutting an extra floor joist, and after taking the floor frame out of its position, I could install this floor joist as well as add some additional hardware to the floor frame. It was a tight fit, but it just needed a little persuasion. I constructed this frame to fit a 4x8 sheet of plywood. I'm dealing with limited space and found that this would be the easiest method. I had also done a lot of research on pre-made sheds and found that building a custom shed would be less expensive and fit my needs exactly. Here I'm tapping in all the joist hangers and securing them with nails. I also added some corner brackets for extra reinforcement. Once the brackets were installed, I could flip the frame over to install the 4x8 pressure-treated plywood. I went with pressure-treated since this sheet is going to act as the floor and be exposed to the elements. This floor is most likely going to get pretty beaten up. After the floor was reinstalled and the entire base of the shed was in a better place to build, I started to cut the studs for the walls. I started by framing the walls that will have the shed doors. Here I've copied the stud locations on the bottom plate as well as the top plate. This makes constructing the door frame a lot easier. Since the intention of extending my fence was to gain access to the backyard from both sides of the house, I'm planning for this shed to act as a pass-through and will have a door on either side of the shed. Having access to my tools from either the front or backyard as well is also a plus. I loosely screwed a 2x4 to the structure to act as a temporary support. Having the 2x4 in place freed my hands and allowed me to see how much adjusting I needed to do. Once I was able to get everything dialed, I secured the first wall with screws. And then after a nice nap, I had to get checked on by my supervisor. You helping me out, Nave? Off camera, I constructed the other door frame and tied it into the base. Then the foreman came out to make sure I was doing a good job. The sidewalls were really easy to construct. I just cut them to size and put them in place. I could then tie the front and back door frames into the side wall. I added some blocking to secure the side walls in multiple locations. And then it was time for another break. I also added additional blocking for more support and to serve as a shelf inside the shed. Baby,
Daddy.
are you getting into trouble? After installing the other side wall, I wanted to extend the wall height to create the angle for the roof. So here I'm copying the stud location to allow the weight of the roof to be transferred appropriately. And then copying those marks essentially to another top plate. Once this frame was built, I could add it to the rest of the structure. I then added the remaining top plates to secure all 4 walls together. I didn't build a header board here since these portions of the walls aren't going to be supporting any of the weight from the roof. Time will tell if I messed up here. Then it was time to start framing the roof. I found the angles that I thought looked relatively good, nothing too precise here, and then I cut out the bird's mouth. After making one as the template, I could then cut out the rest of the roof rafters. I then added some hardware to secure the rafters to the rest of the frame. Where the flanges were exposed, I hammered them flush and added nails to make sure nothing was protruding too far. And after adding an end cap, the roof frame was complete. Now I decided to move on to siding. I added a nail for each side panel to rest on while I secured them to the frame. I was able to nail anywhere there would be a trim piece that would later cover up the nail heads. I also made sure to nail along the gaps of the faux wood anywhere the nails would be seen. The sides of the shed won't really be that visible anyway. After those panels were secured, I then moved to the front and back of the shed. I probably should have cut off the bottom plate first though. After the bottom plates were removed, I could then go back to this panel and cut away any extra material. I found the stud locations that make the frame for the door and marked a line where to cut. I'll be using these panels to make the doors later. I could then repeat the same process on the other side. I started cutting away the side panels on the shortest wall when I realized I had cut them an inch too low. This isn't that big of a deal since it'll be covered up with trim later. Now it was time for the roof decking. I think I made this a lot harder than it needed to be. And then I figured out an easier method. After the sheathing was tacked into place, I cut away any of the excess. And then I secured it with more and more nails. Once the roof decking was secured, I then went around the entire shed to add the trim. After the trim was installed, I went around the shed and caulked all of the corners as well as any exposed nail heads. It was a really hot day when I was doing this, so I had to be really quick so the caulking wouldn't dry too fast. I let everything dry and then it was time for paint. I decided to use the exact same color that my house is painted so it would blend in really well. Here you can see my trim installation was far from perfect, but this is on a side that isn't exposed. I then decided to get my router out to make sure the panel was flush to the door frame. And I guess I had some more trim to install around the door. And then some much needed reinforcements came to help. Where you going? Good job, dude. After painting, I cut some pilot holes so that I could cut a larger hole for the vent.
He drowning. I saved him.
You did? Good job. Now it's the fun part. I didn't really know how I was going to move this thing into place, but I had to figure something out. I have some pipe clamps that I dismantled so that I could use as rollers for the shed to roll on. And then once I had everything situated, I could just kind of push and really manhandle this thing into place. Toward the end, I really used this 2x4 for leverage and to kind of slide it into place. Now that the shed is in its home, I think I'm going to end the video here. Stay tuned for part 2. And thanks for watching.